This is the Fifth Estate Winning Headlines, your media police post. In this segment, we summarize some of the headlines that you may have missed this morning, but we also take a look at the political pieces that we call cartoons in this country. Today is the 21st of September 2021, and I am 2J.
I'm Tom.
And I am JM. In case you missed the headlines this morning, here they are. In the Daily Nation, return of Iron Lady. In the Standard, payback time for Uhuru. In the Star, Mount Kenya tough terms in State House battle. And in People Daily, the new voting bloc that Raila must capture. All very interesting
right?
headlines.
I think they're all stepping up their game. Yeah.
Absolutely, in this season. Now, let me quickly begin on Martha Karua. In light of the recent speculation around her becoming Raila's running mate, I must reassess her electability as the chief in waiting to succeed Uhuru Kenyatta. Last time I assessed Martha, I said, and quite emphatically, that she is incorrigible and ungovernable. Now, those were not even really my personal sentiments, but the sentiments of the Wazers in Kibaki's government. Michuki, the late, would complain about her without ceasing, it is said. I also said that politically, and I repeat, as far as politics is concerned, as far as her political chess moves are concerned, she's got the heart of a lion, but the brain of an ox. And you know what, guys? I still stand by this. And here's why. Her brand of politics with principle, it doesn't really work in Africa. I fault her greatly for quitting Kibaki's government prematurely. In fact, I want to hypothesize that had she not quit Kibaki's government and had she listened to people like John Michuki, people like Njega Karume, she would have gone on to become Kenya's first governor, first woman governor, should have served 2 terms, and now she would undoubtedly be Uhuru Kenyatta's successor in the mountain as the de jure deputy presidential candidate to Raila. It's called playing the long game, you know, and she's not a very patient person. In the game of chess, and 2M can tell you, we are told that you become a good player once you learn how to properly sacrifice a pawn, or for that matter, any other piece on the chessboard. Now, politics is about suffering fools. It's about being long-suffering. It's not a linear game of addition and subtraction. So these are the errors of judgment that, in my view, weaken her electability, her candidacy. Are these things that she can work on? I don't know. Only time will tell. But I do support her candidature. I think it's a fantastic one. It's a breath of fresh air. She's a woman. She's a young person as well. She's not as old as dinosaur as the rest of them. But lastly, while we are on this topic of the path to the presidency, some word of advice to the presidential hopefuls in this country. This business of short-circuiting your political careers to run for president, as Martha Karua did in 2013 running for president, as Peter Kenneth did in 2013 running for president, that's what I call the brain of an ox. They're using an old map to navigate new lands. That route map was what guided presidential hopefuls in the old constitutional dispensation. We have a new constitutional dispensation under Katiba Mbichi that mirrors the constitutional dispensation of America. So you presidential hopefuls ought to be borrowing models from America. Our next presidents, like America's presidents, are almost always going to be senators and governors who usually will win on their first tries. So this idea of, quitting government, then you go in and you contest the presidency, it's not really going to work that way. If you come in from governor or from senator, then you run for president, you're more likely going to get it.
Stop being an ox.
Hey,
precisely.
Jim, there, I disagree with you a little bit there. I know there's no bigger blunder than killing Kikuyus. What Martha Karua did was just misdemeanors. Now,
Good point.
I will flip the script just a little bit. A couple of months ago, Professor Mutahi Ngonyi said that the only man in Gema that can fix William Ruto is Martha Karua. Now, today we'll advance his position and hypothesize that Karua is Kenya's next president.
Oh, wow.
Yes, Kenya may just have another Kikuyu president in 2022. But Karua will not win in round 1. She will win it in a runoff. Allow me to explain. Now, if Karua Ruto, Raila, Kalonzo, and Mudavadi go it alone in 2022, none of them will achieve 50% plus one. Let's look at the numbers. Gema ethnic numbers as per the 2017 voter register. Total about 5.6 million. Let's give that to Karua. Raila has 2.2 million votes. Ruto has 2.3 Kalenjin votes, 2.3 million Kalenjin votes. Kalonzo has 2.1 million Kamba votes. Mudavadi has 2.6 million Luya votes. Although the much he's ever gotten is like 500,000. For each of those candidates to achieve 50% plus one, they have to get 7.5 million votes at the minimum. If Gema's candidate was Martha Karua, she would be the closest to 50% plus one. She'd require slightly over 2 million votes to win in round one. When we go into a runoff, she would only deal with either Raila or Kalonzo or even both. And the reasoning behind this is that she cannot do a deal with Ruto because Ruto cannot serve another term as deputy president. On the other hand, can you see Raila serving as Ruto's deputy? Zero. In fact, the only way Ruto can be president in this scenario is if he does a wash with the voter register. Guy is cooked. Bottom line is there for this. There is a big chance Kikuyus might just go it alone again in 2022 purely on account of numbers. Question is this: how sure are you we're going to have an election?
You just had to do that, didn't you? So I feel like the gentlemen today have taken on the Daily Nation headlines. So I think I'm going to give my shot at the People Daily. Here at the Fort Hall School of Government, we are in the business of watching trends and using history to develop predictions. And the question that has really bothered me in the run-up to the election is what will define it? If every election cycle in Kenya has revealed something new about how country chooses to vote, what can the past 29 years of democratic elections tell us about what will come up in 2022? Lesson 1. In 1992, we learned that Gema could not be relied on as a united voting bloc. In that election, Kenneth Matiba received almost 60% of the Gema vote, leaving Kibaki with the remaining 40%. Now, the assumption had always been that Central Kenya would deliver 100% of their vote for one candidate. Now we know this to be false. This Gema split was confirmed again in 2002. But what is my point? In my view, William Ruto can continue to romance Kikuyus all that he wants. Because nothing is guaranteed. They will probably lie to him all the way to the ballot box. Lesson number 2 comes from 2008. And it is one that I think we have sadly forgotten. We've said it before, that a silly election for this seat called the presidency cannot bring the country to its knees.
Absolutely.
But there are some people who are prepared to do this. Tuam reminded us last week that a certain someone said that the only way to deal with Kikuyus is to first get government. What did he mean by that? Will he unleash hustlers onto the streets and to the country if he loses?
Good question.
Finally, lesson number 3 comes from Professor Mutahi Ngunyi's Tyranny of Numbers. The election was concluded and won by Jubilee on December 18th, 2012, the day that voter registration ended. But unfortunately, this was a trick that could only be used once. Today, everybody knows the power behind mass registration. And that is why UDA is spending all of their time traveling around the country promoting Mataconomics. But this is also why today the People Daily is encouraging Raila to capture a new voting bloc. So what am I saying? Will Gema vote united? Will there be violence after the election? I don't know. Will registration of voters dictate who wins? Again, I don't know. Will the courts continue their trend of political interference? That one I'm pretty certain they will do. Or will we be introduced to what I call the youth factor? As we speak, there are 5.28 million new voters who will be 18 and over by next year. Is this why Ruto has focused his Hustler campaign on the young and ignorant who have no memory of our electoral lessons? I'm seeing a trend, but I'm going to hold off before I make my prediction.
That's a good one. So whom should we give our winning headline. We've got three criteria that we use: topical or speculative, repetitive or groundbreaking, and thoughtful or just plain lazy.
Yeah.
I'm all for the Iron Lady.
All for the Iron Lady.
Daily Nation.
Absolutely. Return of Iron Lady. Daily Nation gives us our unique headline. And now on to our final thought. But before we get there, please don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel. We are also on TikTok. We are on Twitter. Do follow us on those platforms. Our handles are somewhere here below. So what is our final thought?
And now our final thought. It is inspired by a book entitled The Defense of the Realm, The Authorized History of the MI5 by Christopher Andrew.
Yep. So the title of this book is actually inspired by the Defense of the Realm Act. It was passed in the United Kingdom on 8th August 1914, 4 days after the UK entered the First World War. And it was a law that was added to as the war progressed.
Right.
It gave the government these wide-ranging powers during the war, such as the power to requisition buildings from private individuals or land needed for the war effort, or to make regulations creating criminal offenses. So quite an old act that still exists today.
Yeah.
But this book speaks to the role of the security service in British history. And that's what makes this book so fascinating. 20 years ago, a book like this could never exist at all. The security service, better known as MI5, is the domestic arm of British intelligence, while its sister organization, MI6, supplies the British government with foreign intelligence. So the Secret Service actually started in 1909 with 2 men in a single room in central London. And a year later, the 2 men split into 2. One took the foreign, MI6, and the other took domestic, MI5. And in fact, this mysterious organization was not even officially acknowledged until 1989. That's 80 years later. And since MI5's activities were mysterious and hidden, they also became the subject of endless speculation, rumor, and myth. So in order to write this book, Christopher Andrew, the author, and his team of researchers worked through some 400,000 MI5 files and documents. And what did they find? Since 1945, MI5's concern actually hasn't been driven by defense of the realm. That's defense of the country, of the monarchy, of its people. But rather a defense of the Western world as a whole. First, of course, it started with the mischief of the Cold War, and then after 9/11, it shifted to the need to control Al-Qaeda.
Correct.
And today, I believe, as JM will cover, it's concerned with counter-terrorism and counter-espionage. But I think that the author sums it up the best in saying that the success of a security service is best judged by the things that do not happen, rather than the things that do, right? Which got me thinking about these types of units, that no matter how secretive and mysterious they are, they play such an important role in the safety of nations.
Absolutely.
And that maybe their secrets should remain locked up. I don't know. Interesting book nonetheless.
No, it's beautiful. Now, the British have a man called Juan Puyol Garcia, an MI5 agent, to thank for the success of the D-Day, the Normandy landings. Now, without Puyol, Hitler would have had the Brits for breakfast. Here is his story. Now, Puyol was working as a hotel manager in Madrid at the outbreak of the Second World War. Determined to help stop the spread of fascism, he and his wife approached the British embassy, offering his services, only to be repeatedly rebuffed. He then offered to spy for the Germans instead, posing as a fanatical Nazi. In late April 1941, he traveled to Lisbon, from where he concocted a stream of bogus reports based on whatever sources he could lay his hands on. That convinced his German handlers that he was actually working in London and heading a network of spies across Britain. Clever guy, knowing he was an asset to the Germans, he approached MI5 for the umpteenth time. This time round, they accepted him. I mean, how could they ignore a German intelligence officer offering intel? They gave him the code name Garbo, partly because they were impressed by his acting and his lying abilities. The guy could lie like Ruto. So they arranged for him, his wife, and their young son to be smuggled to Britain in the spring of 1942. Shortly after his arrival, Puyol was driven to London, where he took up residence at 35 Crispingi Road in Hendon. What a mouthful that was. Now, this house was an MI5 safe house. He was set up as a double agent, reporting to a wealthy art dealer known as Thomas Harris. Harris was his handler. It was at number 35 that Puyol and Thomas Harris created the extraordinary fiction that would deceive the Germans for the next 3 years.
Oh.
In fact, it was the pairing that recruited an elaborate network of 27 entirely fictitious spies, all of whom the Germans paid for.
Oh.
You know, German intelligence actually believed that there were 25 agents that reported to Puyol. The culmination of their efforts was Operation Fortitude, the astonishingly successful deception intended to mislead the Germans about the timing, location, and skill of the Allied invasion of Normandy.
Yeah.
When Puyol learned that the Germans could mobilize at Normandy, he informed German intelligence that the main attack would be in the Pas de Calais. The Germans therefore kept 2 armored divisions and 19 infantry divisions on the coast of Calais, waiting for an attack that never came. So convincing was the deception that the Germans continued to believe in Puyol throughout the war. 6 weeks after D-Day, Hitler awarded him the Iron Cross for his extraordinary services. What the Germans did not know was that Puyol also received a member of the British Empire Award from the British in December 1944, although he received it in secret to avoid exposing him.
What a con man.
What a con man.
A con man, indeed.
My goodness.
Right now, let me talk a little bit about counter-espionage in the last decade of the Cold War. And I would like to recount 2 of the most dramatic unmaskings in British spy history. In November 1979, Margaret Thatcher exposed Anthony Frederick Blunt in a House of Commons statement as a 4th man of a ring of 5 other British traitors during the Cold War era. Although he had actually been busted internally 15 years earlier, Mrs. Thatcher came out and issued the statement after strong hints to his identity had appeared in the press. And the story was unbelievable. It was remarkable. And if you've watched the show on Netflix, The Crown, there's a whole episode about this. Blunt was the perfect Soviet mole and perfect British traitor. So he was a traitor from a good public school and Trinity College, University of Cambridge, with a record of sexual deviance and connections with the royal family as a surveyor of the Queen's pictures. He was actually in the service of the Queen officially as a renowned art historian. Kept the company of the Queen quite often in those days. So the press had a field day with all that. Traitor at the Queen's right hand thundered the headline in the Daily Mail. The Daily Express also did a similar one. They said, treacherous communist poof. Now, in the wake of Blunt's sensational unmasking in 1979, there was a worldwide media demand for more British traitors.
Yes.
The author tells us. So, imaginary moles identified as the result of mistaken leads began to multiply rapidly in print. Amongst them were Donald Beeves, Frank Birch, Lord Rothschild, amongst many, many others. Though the service knew that all were innocent, it wasn't until August 1982 that, thanks to intelligence from a man by the name Oleg Gordievsky, it finally who finally identified John Cairncross. Cairncross. I beg your pardon. As the 5th man in the ring of 5. This cabal of 5 grand traitors. So Cairncross was also a Trinity graduate who had published a scholarly study on polygamy, but the author says his background as the son of a Scottish shopkeeper was disappointingly modest and contained no connection with that royal family. So as a result, although he was an even more important spy for Soviet Russia than Blunt, his media profile remained much lower and continues to remain much lower. The last one was revealed to the press in 1980 when evidence from a Czech SDB defector identified the only British politician so far who is known to have acted as a foreign agent while holding ministerial office. His name was John Stonehouse, who had served in the Harold Wilson governments during the years 1964 to 1970, a double agent in cabinet. Sounds like somebody who sits on the president's right-hand side in cabinet.
Yeah.
So this guy, 4 years after he left cabinet in 1974, went through hard times. Faced with serious business problems, he abandoned his wife, faked his own suicide, adopted a new identity, and disappeared with his mistress to Australia. And having been successfully tracked down a few years later and brought back to England, he was then sentenced in 1976 to 7 years imprisonment on 18 charges of theft and fraud.
Wow.
Major,
you know what's
major
so strange? You have to have so much respect for the way Brits do it.
Yeah.
And that's why I love the title of the book, In Defense of the Realm,
Yes.
right? At
Yeah.
all costs, you are defending the state, you're defending the government, you're defending your country.
Yes.
I think we need to send this book to some people who live in Karen, and they need to read it ASAP.
Absolutely. Selling our country to people in Turkey and the world.
Although I think they read the deception part.
So today we had a winning headline from the Daily Nation, and I want to leave you with a quote on espionage, or a thought. Let me say a thought. Why do people betray their countries? The acronym is MICE, MICE. That is money, ideology, crime, and ego.
Yes.
But I would also add a fourth, or rather a fifth, revenge.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, thank you for joining us on the winning headlines today. We had a winning headline from the Daily Nation. Don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel. We're also on your TV screens. Go look for us. Have a good evening.